Hello, good morning. I'm Laila from Universitas Indonesia. I'm going to present my research about the construction of cultural identity and urban space, Jakarta in Wahyu Menulis Puisi. First of all, I will introduce Wahyu Menulis Puisi, the poetry that I will study. Wahyu Menulis Puisi was written by Wahyu Prasetya, a poet from Malang. The book, which contains 209 poems, was published by Pelangi Sastra Malang as a form of appreciation of Wahyu during his life. The collection of Wahyu Menulis Puisi describes urban space as an interaction for various elements of society. Urban space is formed by the phenomenon of urbanization, industrialization, and globalization, which can affect cultural diversity in urban space. This cultural diversity can form an intersection, mixture, or the elimination of one culture against another. This research uses qualitative methods by utilizing critical discourse analysis by Teun van Dijk and identity concept from Stuart Hall. It will be seen the depiction of urban and village space based on the emergence of representative diction. Positioning the diction is then seen as a representation of space and community life. Van Dijk shows that critical discourse analysis is to see involvement of context as a macro structure that can be seen through observing topics of themes in a discourse. A superstructure and microstructure can be considered in constructing the meaning of the text. On the other hand, Hall revealed that cultural identity is a placement that is used in narrative of the past. In this situation method, our use still will change in history, culture, and power. In Wahyu Menulis Puisi, the poetry presents the urban space by mentioning Jakarta as a space of urban city. It has rural area, village, that described as binary. In the analysis of critical discourse, the context is a macro structure that needs to be understood before reaching the linguistic aspect. The superstructure of the text shows that textually Wahyu Menulis Puisi illustrate the dualism between urban and village space. As part of the microstructure, the emergence of dominant diction has shaped the image of contestation in urban space dispersed through city space diction like kota, Jakarta, apartemen, gedung, real estate, kota besar, taman kota, and tengah kota. And village space diction like lorong gang, kampung-kampung yang pulas, pinggiran, dusun, rumah kardus, pelosok, lereng Radupani, kampung kumuh, and lorong kampung. This is the samples of poetry. It appears that the title used and imagining urban village space are from two different dictions. The use of latter tend to present harmonious nuances, while the news tend to be interpreted as the presence of something outside of normality. The same thing also appears in the use of diction, city park, and Ranupani slope. The diction have a far-reaching significance between the beauty of city park that is formed with all its governance plans compared to the slope. Such a structure also appears in the use of diction, decoration, serenada, and poetry in urban space compared to diction, portrait, conversation, and dangdut in the village. The different image of urban and village space shows that constructed as different area. The formation of cities as a center reflects indirectly the idea of periphery. This was motivated by the social conditions of the people who lose the fight in the economic class, and education were considered not part of the idea of progress. The emergence of the two dictions can be seen as an illustration related to how the community of the two living space live and their way of turning a small amount of capital on. The poverty described earlier certainly shows their inability to reach the plaza, both in terms of being part of the stock pickers or even just shopping. This inability creates space restriction of the village community. Meanwhile, the phenomenon of urban development that is increasingly widespread so that more malls and buildings are created further confirmed and the inability and limitation of the space. Development that requires the expansion of this land tends to have an impact on the lives of cardboard houses that continue to be shifted to be added. The description of displaced village, burnt village, displaced village, left behind in the past, far outward wishful thinking, references the feeling of being pushed aside of the world even by luxurious civilizations. Nevertheless, the elements of society that were excluded were described as being able to only learn from the reality and problems encounters. But progress in urban space makes elements of society enjoy modern scientific system. The description of urban and village space shows the social imbalances experienced by the community in the village space. As marginal subject, village communities tend to be constructed as subjects that cannot surpass urban society. This is caused by the inadequacy of economic and educational provisions as the main capital of social battles in urban space. Based on the analysis, this research results in finding that contraction of cultural identity in urban space has resulted in the hegemony of the urban community towards the village community. Wahyu Menulis Puisi shows a picture of the life of the urban community in the context of Jakarta, which is divided based on city and village-based redistribution. Village communities as part of groups that experience inequality. Meanwhile, the phenomenon of urban development increasingly shifts, displaces, and removes these elements so that they form a cultural strategy in the form of fusion of space to create a new cultural identity, namely liminal identity. Village communities are no longer fully villagers or urbanites. Through the critical discourse analysis method from Teun van Dijk, this research has utilized the context as a macro structure that has a certain value, and the concept of identity from Stuart Hall to see cultural positioning. This can trigger further research that can utilize the idea of village, city, and fusion space as a compromise to see spatial intervention on the subject. That is my presentation. Thank you for attention.